Again, if you're just joining us, welcome to this Mid-America Region program, a monthly gathering and training for congregational board members serving our congregations in the Mid-America region. I am the Reverend Dr. Matthew Johnson. I am one of your congregational life consultants working with our pastoral sized congregations. My pronouns are he, him, his. I work with mostly our pastoral sized congregations. I'm based in Rockford, Illinois, and I'm a middle-aged white man with a gray and less brown beard every year, glasses, a black shirt, and I'm in my living room in Rockford with some pictures and lights behind me. Tonight's gathering is an opportunity for all of us to practice some of the key leadership skills that are essential in these times. And so we'll ask that you lean into those skills in our interactions with each other as a way to practice them this evening and suggest the following group norms, which Chanel is going to now put in the chat, that you take care of yourself and extend grace to others to do the same, that you share by choice. It's okay to pause or to pass. You share the time. You speak from your own experience. Expect multiple perspectives among us. Pause for repair if it is needed. Make room for joy and laughter and curiosity and growth and sadness and silence. And honor confidentiality, particularly in what might be shared in the breakout groups when we're in together. A few administrative notes. We are recording the portions of the program when we are together in the large group tonight, the learning portions and reflection portion in the large group. So if you don't want to be in the recording, turn off your camera for those portions of the meeting. We also will be going into breakout groups based on your congregational size with your Mid-America region staff primary contact, serving as the facilitator for your group. So if you haven't done so already, now again is the reminder to follow the link in the chat for instructions on how to determine and indicate what group you belong to. And you can see other folks have done that, and so you can do that too. And now I have the great pleasure of passing it to our newest colleague on the Mid-America team, Nico Van Ostred, our congregational life resident. Nico.
Thank you, Matthew. Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Nico Van Ostred. My pronouns are he or they. I am a young biracial Filipino person with short, dark hair and a ring in my ear and my septum, and I'm wearing a sort of rust-colored short-sleeve shirt today. It is good to be with you all. Your other Mid-America staff will introduce themselves throughout the program, but I want to lift up and thank Chanel Gomez from the events team for serving as our tech host tonight. Thank you, Chanel. You will see her in the chat and can message her for tech support at any time. I invite you to settle into this space with our chalice lighting reading. If you have a chalice nearby like this, I invite you to grab it and feel free to light it with me. These are our chalice lighting words, Nourished and Transformed by Lisa Garcia Sampson. Spirit of life and love, spirit that lives within us and between us and among us right now. Within this beloved community and in our work for collective liberation, may we continue to weave the web of trust and care to keep our bodies safe. But more than that, may our bodies be the site of healing, joy, and freedom. May we refuse to let our spirits be depleted and hardened by the forces of hate. Instead, may we open ourselves to be nourished and transformed by the movement for justice, knowing that our collective story is not what we are fighting against, but what we are fighting for. For ours is the work of creation. Ours is the work of inviting people into an irresistible movement rooted in our belief that a new world is possible. And the center of our work is love and joy and the spirit of abundance. These are the things we are fighting for, and these are the things we are fighting with. May we know deep in our bones that this is the call of our faith. Amen, and blessed be. The chalice is now lit.
Thank you, Nico. My name is Sharon Dittmar, and I am the primary contact for our program-sized congregations. I'm an white older woman with teal glasses, long brown gray hair, and I'm sitting in my new home, so everything is frightfully unpacked and white and plain. My pronouns are she and hers. So we're going to be heading into our breakout room soon. First, take a moment to reflect and let us know what trends and themes you're noticing in your congregation. This is very helpful for us, and other folks at the UUA have found this innovation on our part very useful for them to use as well. We like to find out what's going on from you. You are the leaders and the first source, really, about what's going on. So Chanel, I believe, has shared the link. There she goes, because she's amazing. So we'll give you just a few minutes to do that. And then we'll head into breakout rooms for 10 to 12 minutes. And we'll return here at 10 of the hour. So we'll have just a little bit of time there. In your breakout room, you're going to be invited to share a bit about the themes and trends in your congregation and to introduce yourselves. Chanel is pasting the prompts that you will use because she's amazing. Make sure you share time when you're in your room together. And for this evening, the large congregation is going to be merged with the program. So that's terrific for our group. So we are going to move to our groups now. And please, when you get there, share your name, pronouns, congregation, board role, and a theme or trend.
So, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had some wonderful conversations. You'll get to be back in that group a little later. My name is the Reverend David Pyle. I am the regional lead for the Mid-America region. And for this year, for this series, I've been privileged to be the one bringing the primary content, which has been really this year based in large part around a series of programs I've done in the last few years known as mission-based governance. We're going to talk a little bit about that and do a little bit of a recap for the year and share on what is the board's role and responsibility in inspiring congregational transformation. And this is the fuzziest of all the sessions we've done, so hang with me. It's good to have you all with us, but just the name at the beginning. I am a light-skinned, white-identified man in my early 50s with hair that I like to believe is rapidly going blonde. And I use he, him pronouns. I'm wearing a gray and black striped shirt, and I'm in my home office in Oak Grove, Kentucky, which is in the western side of Kentucky near the Tennessee border. It's good to have you all here with us. So, just to say, this series, for those that this is maybe your first time, each month during this month we've wanted to explore with congregational board members one particular different topic of congregational leadership. And this month is not focused on congregational assessment. I apparently keep cease updating that slide. It is focused on transformation. There'll be a short time for presentation and then some group discussion again amongst all of you with your congregational primary context by congregational size. Many of these materials and others can be found on the UUA Leader Lab in the Board Basics course, and I also highly recommend taking the UU Institute course titled UU Board Foundations. So this is me taking a second just to say that running through some of the programming, some of the things we've explored this year in this series as a board is based in a series of programs called mission-based governance that some of our congregations in the Mid-America region and other parts of the country have been engaging in. The idea is that there are 7 primary practices for congregational boards, that a congregational board, moving away from rules and lists to an idea that the board work is a series of spiritual practices. And as this year we've engaged the idea that the board's work in discerning the congregation's mission and vision as an ongoing practice and work of the board, that holding the fiduciary responsibility or the idea that it is the work of the board to ensure that all of the assets of the congregation, be they financial assets or assets of talent and people and resources and building and equipment and location and reputation, that all those assets are being used to fulfill the congregation's mission for the long term. We've explored what it means especially in volunteer-driven organizations, how important it is to capture institutional wisdom in policy. The policy is how we take the information out of David's mind and put it in a way that can be shared for the long term with the congregation. That we assess the health of the congregation. We assess the programs and ways and strategies which we can use to see how well we are doing at fulfilling the congregation's mission and utilizing those resources. The last two sessions, we focused on planning for the future. Both one in general planning, but last session in April on the 3-year rolling strategic planning process that some of our congregations in the Mid-America region have been using. And we began, however, back in the fall, really focusing on the board's responsibility to build and maintain relationships. And that's going to come up again today. And leading to all of these practices, when a congregational board is being able to do all of these things in some form or other within the work of the board, it then opens up the possibility that the board can become a transformational agent of change for the congregation's culture. And that's where we're going to focus our time today. So what does it mean to be the transforming of a congregation's culture? That all of the practices that we've talked about this year of a governing board lead to being able to change, not just that we are better at doing the things we do, which is where a lot of board work often lands. A lot of board work often feels like we're just refining, we're being better at doing the things we already do. But it's asking the question, what are the things that we could be doing? What are the ways our congregation could or should be different? How do we know what are the possibilities of how our mission could change, how our focus and priorities as a congregation could change? It is really in a congregational system, the governing board is the primary agent of change. Now, I will say that a lot of congregations experience staff being in this role, that it's staff that are seeking to create different outcomes that may know what's happening in other congregations and inspiring that cultural change. But staff cannot do that alone and often do not have the actual authority to be the agents of change. The idea behind this practice of transformation, which I admit will be the fuzziest of all the ones we've talked about this year, is the idea of the board becoming that agent of change within the congregation's culture and systems. So what can be transformed in a congregation? Where are the places that congregational change at a fundamental level can happen? The first one, and the one that we as Congregational Life staff spend the most time working with congregations on, is a transformation of the congregation's culture. And hang with me, I'm going to go deep into what congregation culture means in a few minutes. But changing the culture of a congregation is one of the hardest things that congregations actually try to engage, and the most useful, the most transformative, the one that can create the deepest long-term impact in that congregation's ability to live its mission. What also can be transformed is a congregation's understanding of that mission, of what its purpose is, of what it's trying to achieve in a community. And this often comes about by transformation in the congregation's relationships, both within and beyond the congregation. So it is oftentimes I find that the congregations that realize there is a new purpose for them, they do so because they're in relationships with parts of their community that they haven't engaged with before, or that they're engaging with in a new way. So what is congregational culture? This is I often say that the best way that I've found to describe congregation's culture, every congregation has one. I've had the privilege to work with somewhere around 400 UU congregations over the last 12 or 13 years. Every single one of them, as Virginia Knowles, a ministerial colleague, once said, every single one of our congregations is as similar and as different as snowflakes. That every congregation has a different set of assumptions about what is normal, what is acceptable, what are the things that we do within this congregational setting. And this is that congregational culture, that understanding of what people have to accept when they are visitors attending a congregation for the first time. They're exploring your congregation's culture. They're determining whether they can feel welcome within the assumptions of this congregation. I'll give a few examples of this in a few minutes, but This can include congregations' myths and norms. Myths are the stories we tell about ourselves, where our identity comes from as a congregation. Norms are those unwritten rules of behavior that exist in every congregation that you learn by being part of the community. Anybody, just raise your hand real fast if you're part of a congregation that claps. There's congregations that clap, right? If you're part of a congregation that doesn't clap, raise your hands. Maybe they do this, or jazz hands. That those are norms of congregational behavior, and every congregation has a different set. And understanding your own norms and behaviors can impact your ability to understanding that culture is key to them being able to make intentional change in that congregational culture. One of the things I say is if you wanting to know about your congregation's culture, find someone who's been visiting for a few weeks, isn't yet a member, just been visiting for a few weeks, take them to lunch after service and ask them to tell you about your congregation. Not you tell them, ask them to tell you, because they are still adapting. They're still determining whether or not this is a community that can be welcoming and accepting of them. So visiting other congregations in your area can also be, and they don't have to be UU congregations, but the experience of another kind of congregational life can highlight aspects of your culture as a congregation that you may not be able to see because you've adapted by being in it. I often, as a minister, one of the things I would do is I would identify the people who were on the margins of the congregation, who were attending but not deeply connected, and go ask them to tell me about their experience within our community as a way to be able to see some aspects of our congregation's culture. And it's also, and this is the thing congregational life staff do, pay attention to the patterns, to those priorities or things that regularly repeat in the congregation. There was one congregation I worked with that seemed that every congregation in the congregation came around eventually to their congregation's money problems, to the scarcity. And they couldn't see that wasn't very welcoming to people that were coming to visit the congregation because it was the center of their concern. So there are lots of ways that you can get at trying to understand your congregation's culture. The board does need to have a developing understanding of the culture of the congregation in order to think about how does our culture need to change? How do we intentionally want to be a little different? How do we intentionally want to be welcoming? How do we want to transform the environment that we create within our congregation? So trying for this work for a board, the key is to try and describe that congregational culture as directly and as authentically as possible. I ask congregations the first time I do this work with them, I ask them to tell me about their culture, and they will say things like, "We are welcoming, we love everyone, everything is acceptable here," and yes, those things are true, but they're not the whole truth. So what are some of the things that are more challenging about your congregation's culture that maybe you don't experience them anymore, but others maybe have? Look for places where your vision and mission and in your congregation culture are not in alignment. The congregations, areas where you say, we are going to create the beloved community, and yet there is some people that don't experience that. Look for the places where there is some space where we believe in generosity, and yet we struggle with stewardship challenge. Look for those places because those will help identify aspects of your congregation's culture. I worked with one congregation that they never talked about money. There was no pledge campaign. If you wanted to give money, you put it in the bird cage at the back of the sanctuary as you left. That's an aspect of the congregation's culture that was not in alignment with what they said their values were. And determine if there's a change in mission, policy, or resourcing as the board that could adapt the congregation's culture. This is where your more traditional board work comes into the work of transforming the congregation's culture. Once you've identified aspects of your congregational culture that are important, that are challenging, that you would like to be different, then ask the question, does this need to be a change in our missional understanding, our priorities? Is there a policy change here? Maybe a policy change around welcoming, or do we need more resources? What are the things you as a board can do to help inspire that cultural change? But the biggest thing that your board can do is talk about it, is share what that cultural challenge may be, what that thing you've recognized about your congregation could be different. The board has reputational power to be able to speak to the congregation in a way that even staff can't about some of the things that might help the congregation to grow or change by just being different, and let the congregation engage that. So here's the thing. I would love you all to put in the chat. If there was one thing about your congregation's culture, about the way your congregation is together and engages in the world that you would love to change, what would it be? Take a second to think about that and then put your answer in the chat. And not a whole paragraph, just a sentence or two. What is one thing about your congregation's culture, the way your congregation engages and behaves with each other, that you would like to change? It's a hard question, isn't it? More people stepping up as leaders? Yep. More ways of bridging the silos of involvement despite our space limitations. Great one. Engaging new members? People who are angry leave. Yes. To be more open or innovating about trying new things, I would like our congregants to wear name tags consistently during coffee hour and to be welcoming to visitors. There was one congregation I worked with had got coffee mugs that were a different color for all the visitors, and that they meant it to be more welcoming. And instead it became, these are the people you don't talk to because they don't know anything. They're not involved in any committees or anything. Be accepting of those wanting more spiritual content and programs. What I want you to highlight is this right here. This is important transformational work for a governing board. To be able to name those things about the congregation to each other as board members so that you can ask the question, what do we need to do, resources, staffing, equipment, programming, timing, to change this aspect of our congregation so we can more be the beloved community we are called to be? We don't think of this as board work, but it is some of the most important board work that boards do. Some of the most important work that governing boards do. More readiness to volunteer, shared ownership of work decisions. Y'all can keep putting them in. I'm going to move us for the sake of time. So that's the work of transforming the congregation's culture. But I also want to center the board's work in transforming the congregation's mission. So if we go back to last fall, one of the things we did in one of these sessions was talk about ongoing, permanent, regular work by the board to discern the congregation's mission. And part of that is so that you as board members get to know more about each other and what you think is important in the life of the congregation. It's about building a relationship. I said that congregations that do this well, boards that do this well, they start to feel like a covenant group on the future of Unitarian Universalism in their community. But it has there's another part to that ongoing mission, vision, discernment, which we talked about as doing something like the first 30 minutes of every board meeting being a powerful question conversation, where you engage a question like, who would we be if we did not have this building as a board? Not that you're going to sell the building, but you're learning more about what's important to each other. But that ongoing mission vision work, that discernment, is not just about learning from one another. It's also engaging with the changing circumstances in the congregation, in the community, to see when your congregation's mission needs to adapt, needs to change, needs to transform, because the circumstances are different. What the community needed from your congregation 10 years ago may not be the same as what the community needs from your congregation now. What the congregants need from the congregation 10 years ago, I can almost guarantee you is not the same as what the congregants need from the congregation now. And it is the board that is engaged in that regular process of missional engagement so that transformation of that mission can happen over time. So it's not just refining the congregation's mission, but asking the question, how does it need to be different? So I'm going to tell a story. I debated whether or not to tell this story, but some of you know that the last congregation I had the privilege to serve was the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura, California. And Ventura is a wonderful place to do ministry. I miss them every day. And one of the experiences the congregation had before I came there was that they noticed in their community, that the community of Ventura, that there was a growing number of people experiencing homelessness, experiencing active homelessness within the community. Southern California is warm and people can live outdoors year round and survive, and so they do. In any night, there would be several thousand people sleeping outdoors in Ventura County. And the congregation recognized, once again, this is before I got there, they recognized that this dynamic was happening in their community and that it became a missional priority for them to do something about it. Wrote it into their congregation's mission. They created a 7-congregation interfaith homelessness advocacy ministry as a core ministry of the congregation. And then they hired me to come be its executive director. And I got to come into that missional change where the congregation experienced this change in their community, and in many ways repurposed core elements of the identity of the congregation to when, by the time I was leaving, we were known in the community as the homelessness church. And we sued the city. We were giving more money to programs to end homelessness than the city of Ventura was. This became a guiding force of the congregation's mission. And it also changed our congregational culture. I mean, well, Ventura is a fairly wealthy community. We had like a program that was a wedding, a retreat for couples that would cost upwards of $2,000 to $3,000 for the couples to go away for a long weekend. And when we started having homeless families attending our services and being part of our congregation, we realized how exclusive that was. And so we started making changes in our congregation's culture to recognize that our community was different than it had been before. And this is what I mean by this. This change was led by the board, that the board chose to add the missional change, to change the congregation's mission, lead us through a process for that, hired staff to help make that mission a reality, engaged in the wider community. And this is what I mean by the board's responsibility for transformation. And most of that happened before I ever got there. So I'm celebrating them, not bragging on my own work. I got to be part of the result of good missional discernment work by the board. So the board's role in missional transformation is through some process of engaging the congregation's mission on a regular basis, be it powerful questions, open questions in every board meeting. The board is regularly assessing and exploring what is the congregation's mission. And then through relationships with the community, realizing where there are needs that the community, internal to the congregation or beyond the congregation, needs that the board can help to create. And then determine if the resources exist and the interest exists, the people, the money, the space, the property, to be able to make such a transformational, a transformation to the congregation's mission, and then engage the congregation in that missional shift. It was not simply that the board decided that the Ventura congregation needed to refocus its ministries around homelessness. The board went and had this conversation across the whole congregation to gain the buy-in to this becoming a priority of the congregation's focus. To me, this is the most important kind of work that congregational boards do. We pass budgets, we do organizational stuff, we even sometimes hire and supervise staff. Congregational boards do all of those things, but it's really in asking the question, how do we need to be different? What does the community need of us that we are not doing? How can we be better called to live our faith in this community? That is the ultimate work of a congregational board. And then making sure the resources and the staffing and everything is available to make that transformation. That also involves being part of transforming the key relationships in the congregation, because it is the board that holds the official relational authority for the congregation. And that's asking the question, when we touched on this before, when we had the whole session on relationships, we touched on the fact that it's the board that officially holds the relationship with the UUA. And making sure that it's when congregational boards make the commitment, we want to deepen our relationship with the UUA to do that well and effectively. But also, it's the congregational board that can build relationship with the other congregations in the area, be they UU or not. I had another congregation in Maryland that they decided they wanted to build a relationship, a formal relationship with the African Methodist Episcopal Church down the street. And it was the two congregational boards met first. Well, the UU board and the deacons, and they met and talked about what it would mean if their congregations just did some activities to learn more about each other. And so they started having shared church picnics. And because the boards made this commitment, this was a lay-led congregation. The boards made this commitment together to be able to learn more about each other. And now, last I checked with them, they're doing all kinds of stuff in the community together. Very different theologies, but care about the world in many similar ways. And our UU theology of interdependence and call to build the beloved community calls us to this intentional focus on building relationships. And the board has a specific role officially representing the congregation in those kinds of relationships. So one of the best questions I've ever heard a congregational board ask as a powerful question in doing their missional discernment is this one. Who does the wider community think we are? I mean, I asked this of one question, and they told me they think we're a daycare center because there was a daycare that met in their building on a regular basis. But really thinking through getting to the relationships to say, how does the wider community think of us? Is a powerful question to help define identity and even a little bit of culture for a congregation that's exploring how to make missional transformation. And I really wanted to highlight the ways in which the congregational board, lots of people can hold relationships as individuals, but it's the board and the senior staff that can be the body of the congregation. And I believe this, that in our faith tradition, you are not just representing the congregation as members of a board. You are the leaders of Unitarian Universalism in your community. You are the faith tradition. All of our history, all of it's you, as elected members in our polity, you are elected by your congregation to represent all of Unitarian Universalism within your community. So by building those key relationships, you're not just building those relationships between community organizations and activist groups and other congregations on behalf of your congregation. You're doing it on behalf of Unitarian Universalism. And I don't know that we often thank you for that or recognize that that's what our polity says, that our congregational elected leaders are actually doing. So of all 7 of the practices of mission-based governance that I have snuck into this workshop series this year, this one is the hardest to conceptualize because it is really about asking the question, how can we be different? It relies on you doing all the other 6 practices well to do transformation well. You need to be doing good missional discernment to ask the question, how can our mission be different to meet the needs, internal and external, of our congregation? It's a separate practice because you need to be doing those other 6 before you can really ask that question. And all the results flow back because asking this question often leads you back into deeper missional discernment. And from that missional discernment, looking at your resources to see if you have the resources to be able to do something new within your community. It leads you back to then generating policy. What institutional wisdom do we need to capture from what we've done before to do the next thing well, to be the next community we are called to be well? And to assessing all the things, all the programs and all the operations of the congregation that leads you to planning that missional change into the next 3 to 5 years of your congregation's life. All of these flow together in the work of the board. And I want to thank you all for coming this year. And I'm going to do the thing I have not done all year, and that's end a section a few minutes early as we go off to our conversations with other within our cohorts. I want to remind you that there are always other resources, which Chanel's going to put in the chat. The UU Ford Foundations course, the UU Congregational Board Member Training, and the Strategic UU Board, which is a lot of the material we talked about in this course can be found in that section. And with that, I want to thank you all for listening to me talk 30 minutes a month about the practices of a congregational board. It is good to have been with you through this time. And thank you.
Thank you, David. All right, dear ones. We are about to go out into those breakout rooms. First, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Lauren Wyeth, and I serve on your congregational life staff as the person who works primarily with our large congregations and also as the faith development specialist for our region. My pronouns are she or they, and I'm a white person in my mid-50s with curly-ish, blondish brown hair that's about shoulder length and tortoiseshell glasses. And I have behind me a bulletin board with lots of UU-y things on it and a chalice on the other side. And let's see. So we're going to head back into those breakout groups, and that, as always, is an opportunity for us to consider how what was shared in the learning portion of the evening applies in our experience in our congregations. Chanel's going to paste the prompts for our time together into the chat. In the first round, you're invited to answer this question. If you could wave a magic wand and make something about your congregation different, what would it be? And on round two, we're going to share what would you like to be a part of your congregation's mission or purpose that it is not already. And I'm just wanting to remind you that we're in those breakout groups until about 10 minutes before the hour. So we've got a good, nice chunk of time to be together for those deeper conversations. So Chanel, would you go ahead, please, and send us back to our breakout groups now? Thanks.
All right, friends.
Here.
Everyone's back. All right, friends. My name is Kiana Dene. I am an African American woman with colorful glasses. I have locks that are coming, they're not over my shoulder, but they are down my back. And I have on a Turkey 5K shirt today. And I'm in Ann Arbor, and I serve our small congregations here in the Mid-America region. As we come back from our breakout groups, I invite your primary contacts to share one takeaway they have from your group discussion. If you feel so moved, we also invite you to now share in the chat one learning that you are taking away from our time together this evening. Friends, are you ready to share?
Sharon, will you do it for our group?
Okay, Lauren sums it up nicely. Engagement was the theme in the
Oh,
second round. How do we engage
mhm.
people? And I felt like a theme in the first round is people are trying to use words to create mission instead of like the harder adaptive work of like listening and being like, well, where are we now? Who are we now? Like backing up to get you to an answer of that. But you have to risk vulnerability and listening, and it takes time and all those things.
Thank you, larges and program size. Matthew, did you have a sharing from your gathering?
Yeah, we had a really robust conversation on a lot of different things. There were some real themes in the magic wand question, um, and in the, what would you add to your mission about um, inclusion, diversity, a commitment to sort of radical inclusion, to being more authentically connected to disenfranchised communities, um, and to be inclusive in the practices of the congregation. Within people who are already there and people who are not there yet. So that came up a lot, and like, how do we do that? We talked about, wanting to be more generationally diverse, and like, how does that sort of happen in terms of inclusion? We talked about magic wand questions. And then we had some conversation about like how do we do this transformation work, and what are some practices, which got us talking about everything from you know, um, reminding us to like put the generative conversation for the board at the top of the agenda and not at the bottom of the agenda. How important that
Mm.
has been for people who've done that. So endorsement of that thing, which we've encouraged. To like, how long are your board meetings, and how do you manage that, and how do you get people to read the things in advance, and like to actually, and how does the system push back against the
Mm.
transformational work by putting up some technical obstacles to getting people to engage in this, which I think is a real live question in the congregations of our size. So it was a real great conversation from folks. Yeah, thanks.
And I will contribute. Chelsea and I, although we had a personal conversation, the thread I want to throw into this space is functioning from the future and not the past. And really making sure that the work you're doing is forward facing, acknowledging the past and its impact on the future, but making sure that you're doing work that moves you forward. That if you are constantly revisiting, staying in, and ruminating on what has happened in the past, it means that you're not doing the work to move forward. And how important it is to consider it, but not live in it. Be a tourist of the past, but not a permanent resident to it. So I want to thank you all. And with that, I move us to our friend Chelsea.
Ooh, look at that magic you just did, Kiana Janae. Thank you for that. My name is Chelsea Krafka. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Mid-America Administrator and a Program Specialist. I'm a middle-aged, light-skinned woman of mixed race with long brown hair, and I'm wearing a coral-colored shirt today. So thank you all for attending this evening, and to David Pyle for centering us in the board's role in inspiring transformation. We will notify you by email when the recording is posted online in case you want to share it with other members of your board. This program will return next year, but with new content and presenters, so please be on the lookout for the next iteration of the Mid-America Congregational Board Members Gathering. All of our programming for the 2026-2027 church year will be announced over summer. So we have some links that Chanel is going to paste in the chat. And in the meantime, we hope to see you at the Mid-America Annual Business Meeting on Saturday, June 20th at 10 a.m. Eastern, either in Louisville, Kentucky, or online. We also would like to draw your attention to the fact that Mid-America will be offering programming at the Musa and Circe summer camps this year. Both camps take place during the week of July 5th. Lastly, I invite you to help us plan for the 2026-2027 year by providing feedback on this evening's program and what you hope might be offered for congregational board members next year. If you haven't yet started the form, you can find a link to it in the chat now. Let's take a couple of minutes to get those completed and submitted. Let you keep typing away at those. We are grateful for your service to your congregations and to our UU faith. It is our honor to support your leadership. As we close, we extinguish our chalice flame, but not the light of leadership that we bring to our shared living faith. We will carry and share that light until we are together again. Hope you have a great night. Thanks for being here. Go in peace.